The Utah Utes are sending several players to the NFL Combine. How will they do, and why is this week huge for their NFL draft stock? Let's discuss on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcast. If this is your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you in the YouTube comments as well as on social media, where you can follow our show at Locked On Utes on X. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by FanDuel. You can make every moment more. New customers can join today, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined on today's show by Michelle Bodkin of KSL Sports. And Michelle, when you're talking about the NFL Combine each year, I feel like it's so important for guys' draft stock. It's something where if you run a really fast 40, you're probably going to get overdrafted. In a lot of the instances, we've seen guys raise their stock. And even beyond the testing numbers, the interviews and some of the the other tests you'll do that aren't on the field can be huge. I believe this is the NFL Combine is where CJ Stroud took that test last year that caused a lot of, and I can't imagine they're going to use that test again after what he did last year. But I think it's at the Combine where he took a test that led to all this debate and discussion of should he even go like this high and that high? And obviously the tape went out. He still went high in the draft. But there's just lots of crazy discourse that comes out of the Combine. But it really feels like it's a big opportunity for guys to swing their momentum because of the testings and the interviews themselves. And this is a great opportunity for the Utes that have been invited, which includes Keaton Bills, Cole Bishop, Jonah Ellis, Satala Laumea, Sione Vaki, and Devaughn Vele. A great opportunity for all those guys to raise their draft stock.
Absolutely. I mean, the NFL Combine, the senior showcase games that kind of come before that, Pro Day, these are all great opportunities to get your foot in front of, the people that are ultimately going to determine your future. And it's the more you can have that FaceTime with people, I think the better. So, getting to go to a Senior Bowl and showcase how you practice and how you understand the playbook and kind of work through a game week in front of these people is huge. Getting invited to the Combine and kind of getting to go through that process with all those people again is huge. Getting to showcase again at Pro Day with your respective school again is a huge big deal. And so the more you're able to do that, I think the better your odds are of hopefully making a positive impression. I'm sure there are some that have made multiple negative impressions in the past. But for Utah's guys, they're very well trained after having gone through the Utah program. And so there's just a really good reputation there. And I think that's why we continually see a good handful of guys always getting those NFL Combine invites and the senior showcase game invites. And this year's no exception. It's a really good group of guys you just listed and a lot of guys that, I was being asked about throughout the season from NFL people that I know.
Yeah, I mean, this is a group of Utah guys too as well that their stock can be all over the place depending on whose mock you look at, depending on which draft analysts you ask about these guys. So it is a great opportunity to get in front of those people and the teams. I think of someone, let's go talk about the interviews more specifically. The Jets defensive coordinator had glowing praise about Sione Vaki and his versatility and things. So Sione left that great impression like you kind of discussed at the Senior Bowl, and now has an opportunity to continue to build off of that in front of these teams as well. I especially as we kind of move on, as the NFL goes forward, and just we have technology to the point we learned from our mistakes in the past. I do hope that combine numbers will always play a role. But you mentioned guys falling because of negative things at the Combine. I remember in Orlando Brown from a few years ago. He's now been a Super Bowl winning left tackle for the Chiefs, and he's now on the Bengals as well. Orlando, and was really good with the Ravens too. That's the guy who really saw his stock plummet at the combine as well. What it's about for these guys more than anything is, of course, how they look on the field. But that can, of course, get swallowed up so frequently by all the other just hoopla that comes during draft season. And that's where I think it's great that you see these teams putting a lot more emphasis on the interviews rather than what time their stopwatch says. Because as we highlighted too, not only are these players exceptionally talented, but they come from a team in Utah where you do come to Utah, buying into the culture like that. It's about we, not me, all of those things that go into it. And I do feel like Utah truly epitomizes that. So that's where it makes Utah a really good place to help these guys grow into their NFL skill talent and prepare them for the opportunity they have in these interviews to get with these teams that, like I said, whether it was at one of the bowls or just, from visiting the campus throughout the season, getting their first look at them. Like they already might have scouts have crushes on these guys from their film watching like that. Then you get to meet them in person and they can confirm those things as well. So I really feel like the interviewing aspect in some ways could be even bigger than the numbers test for a lot of these NFL teams.
I think it should be. I think we keep seeing character issues, come up with them. And I think a lot of that is red flags get ignored for a flashy 40 time. And it's like, really, like, honestly, unless you're like a gunner, are you really going to be running straight down the field 50 yards? Like it's an interesting thing to watch and see. But like, how does it really apply to what you're asking these guys to do week in and week out? A lot of this stuff just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But things that do matter, I think, are, work ethic, are personality traits, are, willingness to engage with the community. I think those things matter a whole lot more and probably should be weighed a lot more than they are. They certainly do look through those things and they comb through those things. I know for a fact they go through social media. During my time with the Stallions, I got a taste of what NFL scouts do. And I would have a list of names sent to me. Okay, go check out their social media. Tell me what you think. And so I would comb their social media before we would ever invite them. And I know that they do that in the NFL as well. Even things like, I've talked a lot about how I'll get hit up by NFL scouts all the time. How was your interaction with this guy? As a female reporter, one of the few females that are around all the time, like, how did this guy react and act towards you throughout, the 4 years or 2 years or however long he was there? So they literally, no stone gets unturned. They're really looking. And again, I think sometimes the flash and the measurables outweigh some of that kind of stuff. I think they're willing to ignore some red flags on occasion. But the interview part is a huge deal. I know a lot of guys have upped their stock because they can speak eloquently as to, what it is they're being asked to do, or, just have interesting character traits that people find engaging and that they want on their team because it demonstrates good leadership and some of that kind of stuff. So I think that's where I actually expect a lot of Utah's guys to truly shine, is in those interviews. That list of guys, very smart, intelligent football players, and for the most part, really great people off the field too. So I think that's going to be a huge deal for this group.
I definitely agree, and I'm excited to see what these guys can do as it pertains to the interview. But even though I did my best to minimize it, I still think it is fun to talk about the on-field testing. And we have seen guys, test very well and then gone on to do great things in the NFL too. So it still matters, even though I would say the most important thing is the interview process. And I think that's something you agree with, Michelle, based on what you articulated and well said, how they do leave every stone unturned. I thought that was a great point. When you're making $1 million+ investment in these guys, and wherever they're drafted in the draft, you have to do your work, and these NFL teams obviously do. So that's where this becomes fascinating. And I want to talk about how I think some of these guys are going to test for Utah ahead of the crazy week that is the NFL Combine in one moment. But first, I want to talk to all of you a little bit more about one of the sponsors of our episode today, in our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. You can just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and you can shoot your shot. It's capital LNO Locked On to shoot your shot. And with the NBA rolling in once again after the All-Star break, it's a great opportunity to find action on whether you think Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Bucks are going to keep it going. Can Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets catch my Minnesota Timberwolves and get the 1 seed? How about the Oklahoma City Thunder? They've been really fun this year. Individual performances, team performance, wins, losses, all of it available to be bet on at FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Also want to talk to all of you about another sponsor of our episode of Locked On Utes, our friends at UCCU. UCCU has just elevated their checking accounts by enhancing them with more benefits, more savings, and more online protections than ever before. A lot more. Paired with the most advanced and comprehensive mobile banking tools, Elevated Checking is a must-have financial product packed with lifestyle security and financial benefits. The lifestyle benefits alone include cell phone protection, roadside assistance, telehealth with 24/7 access to licensed health professionals with zero copay and exclusive savings on travel, shopping, and dining. And Elevated Checking is free when you do any one of the following. Use your debit or credit card 15 times or more a month, or make monthly direct deposits of $500 or more and maintain an average daily balance of $1,500. Otherwise, UCCU Elevated Checking is only $6 a month. Visit UCCU.com to open an Elevated Checking account online or stop by any branch to open an account. UCCU, love where you bank. Michelle, the NFL Combine is here, and the days when these guys always test is always one of the things that's very spread out. We're going to see the first kind of testing begin later on in the week. When it really gets rolling is this coming weekend is when you get the bench press and going for all the guys. They'll do their on-field testing and workout. A lot of them will get that rolling on Friday. So, but I mean, we do have stuff already underway this week. We have a lot of the defensive linemen and linebackers. So Jonah Ellis is already there doing some interviews today, registering all of the stuff that goes into that. So the combine process can be extensive, as we said, but the testing is a huge part of it still because we do see those guys get overdrafted as we discussed. So I am curious for you, which test in particular and which individual Utah players are you most interested to see and how they'll perform in that individual test?
I think for me, I'm curious to see what Vaki does with the running drills. So the 40-yard, 3-cone.
Mm-hmm. That's what I had too.
What's the other one? I forget. But I think
one of the shuffle. I think.
Yeah. I think he's going to really excel and probably put up some eye-popping numbers on those. I think Devaughn Vele has the potential with the jumps. I think he maybe has, some hops to him that will be impressive. I'm trying to think who else has been invited. I kind of would be surprised if Jonah tests because I think he's still recovering from the shoulder surgery. So I don't know. I think he's probably just there for interviews would be my guess. But if he were able to do it, I think like the bench press, he potentially could put up some good numbers doing that. And then I think I think the offensive linemen, so Bills and Laumea, they have the potential, I think, to really showcase well in the offensive line drills, like the actual drills. I just think they're going to show really good handwork, footwork. I think that's going to be what impresses people about them. I think Cole Bishop, man. I think again, it's his talents are probably going to actually highlight more in the safety drills. So it's the ball hawking, the being in the right place at the right time sort of thing, I think is where he's really going to stand out. And I think he's going to really stand out in those interviews too.
Yes, I think definitely he's a guy as well. As we kind of said with all these guys, they got a great shot to do that. I liked a lot of the ones you mentioned. I'll add a couple more to him. Sione Vaki was literally the first one. He's the guy I'm most excited to watch for Utah at the Combine because if you're asking me who has a chance to be one of the winners of the overall combine, who has a chance to go viral and do all of that stuff. As much as you can win the combine by doing well in the interviews, you can win the internet, which doesn't matter a lot for NFL teams. Probably not. I mean, it did for John Ross when he set the 40-yard dash record, then got drafted inside the top 10 basically because of that. But it is a lot of fun to talk about and react to. I think Sione Vaki has a real shot to be a 4.35 guy. I think his 3-cone time is going to be tremendous. So I am excited to see him get out there and run. And I can already just see, I think it's Daniel Jeremiah and Rich Eisen that call the combine always, like them just being like, wow, look at this Vaki guy from Utah. Look at him fly up and down. Like I can already know that's something that he's going to do well. I think the 40 also could be big for Bishop as well, just because I think that will be the thing. As you mentioned, I expect him to do better in the drills. He's not as much of a testing guy to me. So that's where I am curious. So if he could get to like a 4.45 in his 40, I think that would be a nice sweet spot. I mean, these guys are going to get, once again, the combine numbers get taken out of context for me, just in terms of like how good of a player you actually are, because Kyle Hamilton had a 4.59. And even, I'm a Vikings fan, and we drafted another safety instead of Kyle Hamilton. Now, Kyle Hamilton is one of the best safeties in the NFL, but that's a conversation for another podcast. Anyways, when you're talking about what Jonah Ellis as well, I think you make a great point about will he test or not. I think he's another guy. I think teams would love to see his speed in the 40, because another just really strong guy. We know he's got the pass rush moves. He's another guy I think would do great in the drills. Vele, I love that you highlighted the jumping for him. I think all of those, the vertical long jump, I think he's going to do really well in those. And that's why I think he just needs to be fast enough when he runs, because that's where he's not a bird. He's not some of the top like deep threats in the NFL. That's not his game as much. He's not going to blow you by with speed, but as long as he can show that ability to, like he did in college, separate from defenders because you have some speed, I think that's what matters. And I think if he can get to the 4.5, I think that would be a good kind of mark for him to be at anything around there too. And, as for the rest of the guys, like we mentioned, Laumea and Bill, it's always fun to see what they'll bench press, but especially Laumea, to me, just the strength that he has. And I think he already made a good impression with everyone at the Senior Bowl. I expect him to have a pretty solid combine too, but I really think that all of these guys have really good chances to improve their stock. Some of them I mentioned, if they don't run well and do some of those things, yes, that will hurt them a little bit, but that's where I think the combination of the interviews as well as testing well, and at least some of these, you don't need to knock every drill out of the park, but you got to leave a good impression, and a couple of these can help solidify your status as a day 2 or an early day 3 guy come the draft.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I should have added with Vele, I also think he'll crush interviews.
Yes. Yeah.
He's amazing to talk to. So I think NFL scouts and GMs and coaches are going to walk away very impressed with just his speaking ability and the insightful things that he always seems to have to say. But to your point, yes, it's not, everybody has their strengths. Everybody has their weaknesses, right? It's a matter of showcasing your strengths enough that people are willing to ignore your weaknesses. And take that flyer on you. And every single one of these guys have things that I think they are really great at and they excel at, and they're going to impress NFL scouts and GMs and coaches with, and then they have other things that they either need to continue working on, or it's just never going to be a part of their game. So you need to showcase that this is how I overcome this limitation. Everyone to do it. There's not a single person that goes through this process.
Yes.
Or really through life for that matter, that doesn't have to deal with that and showcase that. So I think every single one of these guys are going to be in great shape. And like you said, it's just a matter of really going out and showcasing what you do well, and then do the things that you're not so great at well enough, or showcase the other things that you really excel at so well that people are willing to ignore. That you maybe didn't do so well in some things.
No, 100%. And I am interested and excited to see how all these guys do this week. That's something we'll be following along at Locked On Utes with. But while we have to wait for the combine, we don't have to wait to talk about the Utah women's basketball team. Their season continues to roll on. It's a crazy weekend for them in California. We want to talk about the highs and, of course, the lows if we go back to last week, too, from that trip with Michelle in one moment. But first, I want to talk to all of you about another sponsor of our episode of Locked On Utes and our great friends at Gametime. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And right now, all users get $100 off when they buy a big game ticket with code Vegas100, and that is Vegas100. Because with Gametime, they have great last-minute deals, all-in-price views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. You can truly take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. My favorite feature is the view from your seat, so you know exactly what kind of a deal you're getting in the seat that you select. And another thing I love about Gametime is just how convenient it is. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of an event, even hour after it starts. It's a great place to find those last-minute seats. And Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Right now, all Gametime users get $100 off a big game ticket with code Vegas100. Terms apply. Just download the Gametime app and use code BEGAS100 for $100 off a big game ticket. Or if you're not going to the game, use code LOCKEDON, capital L and O, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. Michelle, Utah started their trip out to California with a disappointing loss to UCLA, but then in a great bounce-back victory against the top 10 ranked Trojans. Alyssa Peely took it to her former team, scoring 23 points, 12 of 14 from the free throw line. How about that for Utah? Deja Young brought a nice 13 off the bench. McQueen with 14 too. And Utah got off to a great start in this one, outscoring the Trojans 14-6. Of course, they would have loved to go 2-0 in this trip, but I still think 1-1, anytime you're taking on two prominent programs, which it seems like Utah has to reckon with every week in the Pac-12, is still a really successful stint.
Yeah, I think the goal going into last week was absolutely splitting the difference.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone in that building realistically thought, of course, as you mentioned, you always want to win every game, but realistically speaking, I think everybody kind of knew that the likelihood was they'd get one and they'd probably lose one. And that's exactly what happened. Now, how they lost the UCLA game, I think was the shocking part. It wasn't that they lost. It was that the wheels just absolutely fell off from the beginning, pretty much fell off, if we're being honest. So I think that was more the surprise with that than anything else. And then, but this team showed great resiliency, and they bounced back. Everything that went wrong in that UCLA game, they pretty much took over. Still a little turnover heavy, but everything else was really cleaned up. The shots were falling, and it wasn't just one person. Yes, Alyssa was kind of the top dog again, but there were a lot of other people kind of right on her heels contributing. As you mentioned, Kennedy McQueen, Deja Young, Maddie Wilkie was a huge contributor. So, they just had a lot of people on deck doing their job, which I just don't think happened against UCLA for whatever reason. And sometimes you just have games like that. But I think the more telling thing is, how do you respond to something like that? And this team responded very, very well.
I think we forget how long the season is. The Utah women's basketball team has, of course, been playing since Utah played Colorado, since we had Batari versus, I can't even remember who played for them. But that feels like an eon ago to me. And that's how long the season is. And that's where I think just anytime you do something for that long, you're just down to have off nights, especially against other really good teams when they get the comfort of playing at home too. So definitely think that's what it is too. And Michelle, it's crazy because we're coming up against it now. The Utah men's and women's team, both with just a couple games left in the regular season. And if people want to follow along with them, as well as the gymnastics and everything going on with the Utah football program, where should they head over to?
Yeah, so definitely keep your eyes on KSLSports.com under the Utah Utes tab. Just about everything there is written by me, with a little help from others as needed. But we will actually be in Las Vegas for the Pac-12 tournament. So definitely watch what we're doing, because we'll have both the men and the women covered this year at the Pac-12 tournaments. And then, of course, on social media, you can follow me at Bodkin KSL Sports on X, Threads, and Instagram.
Michelle, thank you so much for joining us.
Anytime. Happy to do it.
That is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes. We'll be back with you tomorrow talking more things Utah football and Utah athletics. We'll see you.
You are Locked On.